Kevin Wadsworth from NorthStarBadCharts.com is back once again to talk about the recent downward movements in precious metals, as well as if that short term $30 price target is still on the table for silver. This and more on this week's episode of Metal Money. I'm your host, Patrick Vieira. Kevin, welcome back to Metal Money. How are you doing?
Great to see you again, Patrick. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Good to see you as well. Kevin, last time we spoke in early May, you said you were expecting silver to break $30 in a few weeks. I was hoping for that as well. But silver just wasn't able to close above that $28 daily since then, and prices have even fallen a bit lower. Were you surprised by the price action, and what did you make of this forecast that went in the opposite direction?
Well, we're all looking for silver to break that very sort of clear $28 to $30 psychological level. There's some technical levels between $28 and $30, and we've got some very good support just below where we are at the moment with the current silver price, anywhere between sort of $25 and $27. So it's really a matter of time. We're obviously waiting for silver price to break that level. Yes, I thought it would happen more quickly, but it's just bouncing around in that sort of intermediate level, anywhere between 26, 27, and $30. And we're just waiting for it to push through that $30 level. So there are all sorts of technical reasons. We can look at the technical chart in a little while and look at where we're at exactly. But there's nothing concerning about the technical chart at the moment. We've got the quarterly close coming up, of course, and the end of June we've got the quarterly close, and that's going to be important. And that'll tell investors quite a lot going forwards, I think. And a lot of markets, including cryptocurrencies as well as the precious metals markets, and commodities more generally, are sort of at quite an important crossroads, I feel, at the moment, quite an important decision point.
Also, in our last interview, I believe you had mentioned seeing a peak for silver as well as Bitcoin around July, August, maybe even into September of this year. Has the recent downward price action changed your forecast as well?
So all that ties in with a lot of the charts pointing towards an uptrend developing around about now. As we've already discussed, I would have expected it to have already started maybe a few weeks ago, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, something like that. But things have taken a little longer to develop. So nothing really has changed in terms of my expectations for precious metals to rally throughout this year. Whether it just pushes to the right a little bit and we see that rally continuing on into the into sort of Q4, I suppose, Q3, Q4, that's a possibility. My initial expectations were for silver price and precious metals to reach a peak sometime, as you say, sort of late July into perhaps early August. I don't think really my expectations have changed too much at this point in time, but obviously we'll have to monitor how things happen over the next 2 or 3 weeks. And if anything unexpected happens, if any important technical levels break in particular, then that'll cause me to have a rethink. But as I said before, nothing has particularly changed since we last spoke. There's no important level that has been broken either to the downside or to the upside. So we're in a kind of quite a frustrating holding position at the moment, waiting for more evidence to come in. So short answer to your question, I suppose, nothing much has changed yet.
Kevin, recently in this chart you posted on Twitter, it shows an inner arc support of silver and the secondary support arc, which the recent price breakdown of silver did test. What led the silver price to break downwards into the secondary support level in the 30-week moving average?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you get a little bit of a candle down sometimes on the price action on could be silver, gold, or anything else, and those candles, you tend to kind of, you do tend to dismiss them a little bit and perhaps think that they're not going to be too relevant going forwards. But just sometimes those candles can actually sort of represent a price level, particularly with this arc, as you mentioned, that with hindsight, you look back and you think, actually, that those sort of price extremes do build out a little bit of evidence, a little bit of downside support. And it's interesting with technical chart analysis. I often try and use a support zone rather than a support line for that very reason, because the extremes of price action can create a sort of extended zone of support, which later on, weeks, months, or even years later, turn out to be relevant. And that's the case here. A perfectly parallel secondary arc has kind of followed the inner sort of price arc. When you look at the chart, you can see that the main arc that supported the silver price over recent times has held very, very well and very clearly, and it's given very good support to the silver price. But this recent little drop down was supported by what I've called an outer arc. And of course, when I posted that on Twitter, there's a certain amount of criticism from people saying, oh, well, your first arc doesn't work, you stick a second arc on. Well, it's not quite as simple as that, really, because in reality, you do have to take account of, well, reality, and sometimes these things that you don't always spot first time on a price chart, you go back and you think, well, actually, yeah, that was quite it was an important bit of price action there, even though you didn't think it was going to come into play later on. So it's a lesson, I suppose. Technical chart analysis is you have to have eyes in the back of your head, and you have to look at every possible piece of evidence. But as I said earlier on, there's nothing particularly broken at all in precious metal charts at the moment. Silver's doing reasonably well, actually, and holding up pretty well. And a lot of this is tied in with expectations around the US dollar and interest rates and real rates, of course, which it's another one of those parts of the market at the moment where I suppose you could say the jury is out and people are waiting for a clear direction. Although, a lot of my technical charts come to a very clear conclusion about where we're going, which gives me a good level of confidence. But it's often the case, and with precious metals investors, you won't need me to tell you this, it can be very frustrating sometimes, and things that you think would take a few weeks to play out actually end up taking a few months to play out. So you do have to have patience, and you have to have confidence in your long-term projections.
You say in your charts, nothing is showing a breakdown as far as silver goes. Would it be possible to get a number for that breakdown? Because we had a guest on last week, and he was mentioning we may see $20 or even sub $20 silver. So is anything? I mean, could you give us let's just say a number on what that breakdown might be?
Well, at the moment, we're just bouncing on that secondary arc, as you mentioned, and it's somewhere around about the $25 mark, perhaps a little bit above $25. I'm just, whilst I'm talking to you, looking at a chart on the screen in front of me, and it's perhaps nearer to 25.50, that kind of area. Currently, as we speak, we're a little bit above that level, and we're finding some support from the 200-day moving average. We've got a confluence of support. 200-day moving average, we've got some rising trend lines, and also this secondary arc. And very often, Patrick, when you have a confluence of support and you have several chart lines coming together, that gives you, again, increased confidence. You can think of it as a sort of a force field, and if you have support given by one particular piece of evidence, that's good, but it's not particularly strong. And if you have 2 or 3 or 4 pieces of evidence, and Fibonacci levels come into play here as well. So if you have a Fibonacci level, a support line, the edge of an arc, they're all coming together at this particular point, it means, firstly, that particular point is really, really important. If you cross below it, it's particularly significant. So if price were to fall, I'll say $25 for your viewers and listeners. $25 would be a kind of a line in the sand, I think. Anything below that kind of level for any period of time, particularly a weekly close, would give me cause to go back to the drawing board and rethink things. So we want to hold above that level. I expect that we will, and I expect that price action will hover around this level, perhaps for a little while, but begin to bounce upwards and be more bullish. But anything below that $25 level, and we have to accept reality, and we have to sort of reconsider where we're going.
Is that $30 silver price point still on the table short term for silver?
Again, I'm just going to look at the price chart whilst I'm talking to you. So the target for $30 is going to be around about July. I'm still with the charts as they're drawn at the moment. I haven't really needed to change them, although yes, things are taking a little bit longer to play out. But we're still looking at challenging the $30 level by late July. The arc which I use to give me a guideline as to when these targets are going to be reached. Yeah, it's looking like late July for that. There's a zone actually between $28 and $30, and we need to get above that to see the next leg higher, if you like. But I think I'd expect some resistance to that $28 to $30 level. So we need to just monitor that to see how price reacts at that sort of place where we'll see a challenge to the price. So late July, $28 to $30. That's another 10 to 15% above where we are at the moment, I suppose. So the miners, the silver junior miners in particular, should react very nicely to that kind of a move, and probably talking about gains of 25 to 30%, I suppose, in the mining space. Should we see that? So that'll be quite nice to see in the next few weeks, of course.
Okay. I want to move over to gold. A lot of people say the $1,740, $1,750 support level is a critical support level for gold. Why is that number so critical?
Well, 1740, 1750 is it's a confluence of support. In my technical analysis, there's a large arc that goes back to 2011, and you can think of these arcs. Anybody that follows me will be able to see these on my Twitter feed, of course. And these arcs are really a basing formation, a basing pattern that gets challenged several times over a period of years. And when this happens over a period of years, it kind of gives you it gives the pattern more importance, because it's not just something that forms over the space of a few days. So it's much harder for price to break down. And when it does, it's it can be a big problem. And the edge of that arc, we've completed the arc. We've moved all the way from 1050 all the way up to the target, which is around about 1850, and punched through it to over $2,000. So we've exceeded the target from 2016 that the arc provided. What we're doing now is building out some kind of a bullish consolidation pattern. Actually, I'm going to post a chart shortly on my social media channels, which shows a potential bullish flag or pennant building out, which has been building since last summer, of course, and may take a little bit longer to build. The support line on that takes us just down below the edge of the arc, actually, as this flag pennant formation begins to build out. So yes, the 1740, 1750 level is important, but I think perhaps this consolidation pattern is taking over now. And for me, that has a support line around about 1690, 1680, 1690. It's a descending support line. So as time goes on, that support line just drops a little bit. But as we move towards the end of this year, the support line it's around about that 1680 or 1690 level. So that's a line I wouldn't want to see us fall below. And when the flag breaks out, it needs to move above about 1860, 1870 to do that. And when we break out, then much higher upside targets come into play. So just like silver, we're in a holding formation at the moment. It's probably going to frustrate the heck out of everybody if we don't sort of see silver breaking $30 and if we don't see gold moving to new all-time highs. But from a technical charting analysis point of view, it's all pretty normal behavior in a sort of a pause in the middle of a bull market. So we've got the 8-year cycle low coming up in late 2023 or 2024, of course. And as I mentioned to you before, the big question is, are we slowly descending towards that 8-year cycle low already, which I somehow doubt, or are we going to see a surge in the next sort of 6 to 12 months and then a pullback into the 8-year cycle low, which is more like my sort of preferred scenario. Either way, long term, with the monetary debasement and what's going on with the US dollar and interest rates and the corner that the Fed have painted themselves into, there's in my mind, a hugely bullish future for precious metals, for gold and silver. I think investors just need to have that patience and have that conviction. But whatever happens in the short term, the medium to long term is looking very bullish indeed.
Kevin Wadsworth from NorthstarBadCharts.com. We appreciate the time you've given, and I hope we can do this again soon.
Yeah, I'll look forward to it, Patrick. Thank you very much. Cheers, everybody.
There you go. The outlook for silver remains as positive as ever. As always, leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and remember to keep it liquid, keep it real, and I'll see you on the next episode of Metal Money.